The old house on Elm Street was a relic from another time. It had stood empty for years, a silent witness to the changing world around it. The paint was peeling, revealing the weathered wood beneath like old bones. The windows were dusty and dark, like closed eyes that had seen too much. We were hired to bring it down, to make way for something new. Our job is often about new beginnings, but to get there, we first have to say goodbye to the past. This house, however, had one last story to tell. A secret it had been guarding for a very long time. It was a story we never expected to find, hidden away from the world. Our crew arrived early that Tuesday morning, the air still cool with the promise of a warm day. We had our sledgehammers, our crowbars, and a detailed plan for the demolition. The goal was to take the structure down safely and efficiently. The team, Marco, the foreman, David, a young guy eager to learn, and myself, started on the ground floor. We worked methodically, pulling down drywall and tearing out old fixtures. It felt like any other job, just another house that had reached the end of its life. But there's always something special about these old homes. They have a certain character, a feeling that a new build just can't replicate. We moved through the living room, the dust dancing in the beams of our flashlights. The silence of the empty house was broken only by the sounds of our work, the crash of plaster, the creak of old floorboards, and our own steady breathing. Every house has its own sounds, its own rhythm. We're used to the groans and sighs of a building giving way. But this house had a different kind of sound waiting for us. It was a sound that would stop us in our tracks and change the course of our day. It would turn a routine demolition into an unforgettable journey into someone's life. As we prepared to tackle the main wall separating the living room from what was once a study, I felt a strange sense of hesitation. It's a feeling I sometimes get with these older properties. It's as if the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for you to uncover something they've been protecting. We thought we were just there to clear away old wood and bricks. We believed our job was simply to erase the past, to build the future. We soon learned that some parts of the past aren't meant to be erased. They are meant to be found, to be understood, and to be remembered. This house wasn't ready to be forgotten just yet. David was the first one to notice it. He was swinging a sledgehammer against the study wall, the thuds echoing through the empty space. On his fourth swing, the sound changed. Instead of the usual dull thud of plaster and lath, there was a sharp, metallic clang. It was a sound that didn't belong. David stopped, his hammer held mid-air. He looked over at Marco and me, his eyes wide with confusion. "Did you guys hear that?" he asked, his voice cutting through the dusty silence. We had. It was a clean, solid sound, like hitting a steel plate. It was completely out of place in a wall made of wood and plaster. Marco walked over, his boots crunching on the debris. He tapped the wall with the handle of his own hammer. Tap, tap, thud. Tap, tap, clang. There it was again. A small section of the wall, about 3 feet by 3 feet, sounded hollow in some spots and unnaturally solid in others. It was strange. In all our years of demolition, we had encountered many things hidden in walls. Old newspapers used as insulation, forgotten tools, even the occasional mouse nest. But we had never heard a sound quite like this. It was a mystery, and our curiosity was immediately sparked. What could be behind there? "Let's be careful with this part," Marco said, his usual loud voice now a focused whisper. He traded his sledgehammer for a crowbar. Instead of brute force, we started to work with precision. We carefully pried away the layers of drywall and plaster around the area where we heard the noise. It felt less like demolition and more like an archaeological dig. Each piece of wall we removed seemed to bring us closer to an answer. The dust swirled around us, but we barely noticed. Our attention was completely fixed on that one section of the wall, on the secret it was so clearly hiding from view. Slowly, an outline began to emerge from behind the crumbling plaster. It was dark metal, cold and unyielding. It was the front of a small safe, embedded deep within the wall cavity. Its dial was covered in a thick layer of dust, and its handle was stiff with age. We all stood back for a moment, just staring. A safe, hidden inside a wall. It was the kind of thing you see in movies, not something you find on a Tuesday morning at a routine demolition job. The air grew thick with anticipation. The house had been guarding this secret, and we had just stumbled upon its hiding place. Finding the safe was one thing. Opening it was another challenge entirely. It was an old model with a single combination dial and a heavy, stubborn handle. There was no key, and of course we had no idea what the combination could be. For a moment we considered the simple solution: cut it out of the wall and force it open with our tools. But looking at the old, dignified safe, that felt wrong. It felt like we would be breaking a promise. Whatever was inside had been placed there with care, locked away for a reason. It deserved to be opened with respect, not with brute force. Marco, who had a knack for solving problems, had an idea. He gently cleaned the dust from the dial, his rough hands surprisingly delicate. He put his ear close to the metal door, just like they do in old films. "Sometimes," he said with a grin, "the old tricks are the best." He began to turn the dial slowly, listening intently for the telltale clicks of the tumblers falling into place. Click, click, click. The process was slow and painstaking. David and I watched in silence, holding our breath. The only sound was the gentle whirring of the dial and Marco's soft murmurs of concentration. After what felt like an eternity, we heard a final, satisfying clunk. Marco's face broke into a triumphant smile. "I think that's it," he whispered. He grasped the stiff, cold handle with both hands and pulled. At first, it didn't budge, rusted shut by time and humidity. He grunted with effort, putting his full weight into it. With a loud, groaning creak of protesting metal, the heavy door slowly swung open. A wave of musty air, smelling of old paper and dried flowers, washed over us. It was the smell of a forgotten time, a scent locked away for decades. We leaned in eagerly, our flashlights cutting through the darkness inside. Our minds were racing with possibilities. What would we find? Piles of cash, sparkling jewellery, gold bars. It was a moment filled with suspense, the kind that makes your heart beat a little faster. But as our eyes adjusted to the dim light, we saw that the safe contained none of those things. There were no riches, no valuables, no treasure in the traditional sense. Instead, it was filled with something far more personal, something that felt infinitely more precious. The real treasure was a story waiting to be told. Inside the safe, there were no stacks of money or glittering jewels. What we found was a collection of simple, everyday things. On top lay a small, leather-bound notebook, its cover worn smooth with time. Next to it was a stack of black and white photographs, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. A small, intricately carved wooden box sat in the corner, and beside it, a single sealed envelope with the name Robert written on the front in elegant, looping cursive. These weren't items of monetary value. They were items of sentimental value, pieces of a life carefully preserved and hidden away from the world. David reached in and gently lifted out the stack of photographs. We gathered around as he carefully untied the ribbon. The photos showed a smiling family, a man, a woman, and a young girl. They were pictured at a beach, building a sandcastle, in a backyard, having a picnic under a large oak tree, and at a birthday party, the little girl beaming as she blew out the candles on a cake. In every photo, their faces were filled with pure, unadulterated joy. It was a window into a happy life, a time filled with love and laughter. We could almost hear their voices echoing from the past. shook it gently, something rattled inside. I carefully lifted the lid. Nestled on a bed of faded velvet was a child's silver locket, tarnished with age, and a single, dried white rose. The locket was heart-shaped, and when I opened it, I saw two tiny portraits inside. The same woman and the young girl from the photographs. The dried rose had lost its colour, but it was still perfectly intact, a fragile memento of a special moment. These weren't just objects, they were symbols of love, cherished memories given physical form. Finally, our attention turned to the leather notebook and the sealed letter. The notebook was filled with handwritten entries, the ink faded but still legible. It seemed to be a journal. The letter, however, felt more important, more immediate. It was addressed to no one, yet it felt like it was meant for us, the ones who would eventually find this hidden time capsule. We knew that this letter held the key to understanding everything. It would explain who this family was and why these precious memories were locked away in a safe, hidden in the wall of a house destined for demolition. With trembling hands, Marco carefully opened the sealed envelope. The paper inside was thin and brittle, and we worried it might crumble in our hands. He unfolded it and began to read the letter aloud, his voice soft and respectful. The letter was from Robert, the man in the photographs. He wrote about his wonderful wife, Eleanor, and his bright, beautiful daughter, Lily. He described their life in this very house, a life filled with happiness and simple joys. His words painted a vivid picture of a loving family, and we could feel the depth of his affection in every sentence he had penned so long ago. The tone of the letter then shifted dramatically. The joyful words gave way to an almost unbearable sadness. Robert wrote about the accident. It happened on a rainy night, a drunk driver crossing the center line. In an instant, his entire world was taken from him. Eleanor and Lily were gone. He wrote about the silence in the house, a silence that was once filled with laughter and song. He described the pain of walking past Lily's empty room, of seeing Eleanor's favorite armchair sitting vacant. The house, once a source of comfort and joy, had become a constant, painful reminder of everything he had lost. In the letter, Robert explained why he had hidden these things. He couldn't bring himself to get rid of them. They were all he had left of his family. But keeping them out in the open was too painful. Every photograph, every entry in his journal was a fresh wave of grief. So, he decided to create a time capsule. He built this safe into the wall, a secret place to protect his most cherished memories. He wrote that he was sealing away his heart, locking it away because the pain of remembering was too great to bear. He was an old man then, and he knew he would not live in the house for much longer. The final lines of the letter were a plea. He hoped that whoever found these items would understand. He didn't want his family to be forgotten, but he couldn't live with the constant reminders of his loss. Hiding them was his only way to survive the crushing weight of his sorrow. He was entrusting his memories to the future, to strangers who might one day stumble upon his secret. The letter wasn't just an explanation. It was a final, heartbreaking act of love for the family he could never forget, and a story he could no longer carry alone. Reading it, we felt like we knew him. As Marco finished reading the last words of Robert's letter, a profound silence fell over the room. The dust motes floating in the sunbeams seemed to stand still. The sounds of the city outside faded into a distant hum. We were no longer just three construction workers in an old house. We were the keepers of Robert's story, the custodians of his grief and his love. David, the youngest of us, wiped a tear from his eye with the back of his dusty glove. He had been completely silent, his face a mask of sorrow and empathy. The story had hit him hard, as it had all of us. I looked at Marco, a man I'd known for 15 years. He's a tough guy, not one to show his feelings. But in that moment, his shoulders were slumped, and his face was etched with a deep sadness. My grandfather lost his brother in the war, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. He never talked about it, but he kept a single picture of him in his wallet until the day he died. We all have our own stories of loss, our own hidden safes filled with memories we can't bear to look at but can't ever throw away. Robert's story felt personal because, in a way, it was a story we all understood. The job suddenly felt different. We were not just tearing down walls, we were standing in a place that had held so much love and so much pain. This wasn't just wood and plaster. It was the backdrop to a family's life and the tomb of a man's broken heart. The sledgehammers and crowbars in our hands felt heavy, like instruments of destruction in a sacred place. How could we continue to tear down these walls, knowing what they had protected for so long? How could we demolish the room where a man had so carefully hidden the last remnants of his happiness? We carefully placed all of Robert's belongings back inside the safe. The photos, the notebook, the wooden box with the locket and dried rose, and finally, the letter itself. We closed the heavy steel door, the sound of it clicking shut echoing the finality of Robert's decision all those years ago. The demolition plan no longer mattered. Our schedule no longer mattered. What mattered was honoring the story we had found. This discovery had transformed our perspective. It was a powerful reminder that our work is not just about buildings. It's about the lives lived within them. Instead of swinging our sledgehammers, we made a phone call. We called the property owner, the developer who had hired us to clear the lot. We explained what we had found, our voices filled with a conviction that surprised even ourselves. We told them Robert's story, reading parts of his letter over the phone. We told them about the photographs of his smiling family, about the locket, and about the crushing grief that led him to hide it all away. We weren't just asking for a change of plans. We were advocating for a man we had never met, and for a family we only knew through faded pictures. To our surprise and relief, the developer listened. They were moved by the story. After a long conversation, they agreed. The demolition of this one room would be put on hold. Instead of tearing it down, they decided to preserve it. The plan changed from total demolition to a renovation that would incorporate this room into the new structure. It would become a small reading nook or a quiet study in the new home, with the safe left in the wall as a permanent feature, a testament to the story it held. Robert's memories would not be destroyed, they would be given a new life. Our job on Elm Street changed that day. We transitioned from a demolition crew to a restoration team, carefully working around the room to protect it. We felt a sense of purpose that went beyond our usual work. We were no longer just clearing a site, we were preserving a legacy. Every time we walked past that wall, we felt a connection to Robert, Eleanor, and Lily. The house was no longer just an old, empty structure. It was a vessel of human experience, a place where love, joy, and sorrow had left an indelible mark on the very walls themselves. That day taught us a valuable lesson. It taught us that every old house has a story to tell if you are willing to listen. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not made of gold or silver, but of paper, ink, and memories. They are the stories of the people who lived and loved within those walls. We left the house on Elm Street with a deeper appreciation for the history that surrounds us, hidden just beneath the surface of our modern world. And we knew that Robert's story, once locked away in darkness, would now live on in the light.